All right, hello, everybody. Welcome in. Yes, I was waiting for the end of the World Series because I know that sports fans are sports fans. And when there's the decisive game of one of the major American sports, you probably want to watch that. Although, it's tough because 49ers fans might not like the Dodgers, but then there are a lot of 49ers fans who do like the Dodgers. There's that combination of Dodger and 49ers fan that probably wouldn't be watching this show, but instead would be watching the World Series. And they may still be watching the aftermath right now, so they'll have to watch this show a little bit later. But, earlier today, I did the 49ers update in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we talked 49ers trade candidates, particularly on the defensive line, because that's where they've typically traded. So they've typically acquired players ahead of the deadline. I think it is important to take note of what John Lynch said on KMBR this morning. There are other additions the 49ers can make to what they're currently doing that are already on the roster that I think in effect count as trade deadline moves, but all obviously would not necessitate a trade to execute. So that's what we're talking about today. Do not forget the 49ers' obvious trade deadline moves. The obvious trade deadline moves are Christian McCaffrey and Dre Greenlaw. The return of two really good players. This today from SF Data 49ers. Everybody follow SF Data 49ers, by the way, in case you don't already. Really, really good 49ers graphics. A lot of the stats that I like to put up visualized. San Francisco this year is looking good at this midway point as far as efficiency goes. The 49ers offense is ranked number 7. This is defense adjusted value over average. So this is going to take into account strength of schedule. Their defense is ranked number 6. They're a balanced team when it comes to offense and defense. And then this is visualized on the graph by them being in the upper right corner. The further to the right you are, the better your offense is. The further up you are along the y-axis, the better your defense is. And as you can tell, the 49ers are right in the cluster of some of the best teams in football. I would say that Buffalo has been the best team so far. Detroit's been really good, although Detroit's had a severe injury to a very key player, Aiden Hutchinson, that the Buffalo Bills have not had. The 49ers are obviously right next to the Chiefs. San Francisco lost to Kansas City at home, but they also lost a couple really important receivers midstream in that game. So they hadn't had the chance to recalibrate yet. The point is that these teams are all in a cluster. The 49ers aren't that far off from a team like the Detroit Lions, DVOA wise, and DVOA has been shown to be very, very predictive compared to just record or compared to some other metrics like yardage. It is efficiency based. So the 49ers are right here. And then you talk about what they might be able to add in the trade deadline. Well, first, let's focus on what they can obviously add from within, and that's Christian McCaffrey and Dre Greenlaw. So the question is, where does Christian McCaffrey take this offense? In 2022, before the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, their offense ranked about number 10 in DVOA. After they acquired Christian McCaffrey in 2022, the 49ers were number 1 by a country mile the rest of the way. Obviously, Brock Purdy also took over as quarterback, but that was before there was a huge gap between Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo. In 2022, Garoppolo was running the offense extremely efficiently with McCaffrey. Then Purdy took over. And, I look at the stats from 2022. Garoppolo was actually a little bit more efficient than Brock Purdy that season. Purdy came back after the elbow injury in 2023 and was a big leap ahead of Garoppolo. So Garoppolo was always good for the 49ers. Purdy, starting in 2023 especially, was great for the 49ers efficiency-wise. Purdy has now entered this 2024 season playing great football. The best quarterback play, I think, of the Kyle Shanahan era has happened from Brock Purdy this year. But, of course, he hasn't had the weapons that he had in 2022 and 2023 because McCaffrey's been out. So in the past, when McCaffrey joined the 49ers lineup in 2022, and what could be said was a similar situation, there were definitely some parallels. The 49ers went from about right here. I'm drawing where their logo would have been in 2022. They were a little bit above average offensively to over here. They went way over here with Christian McCaffrey. They are the number one team by a lot, maybe even as far out as the Ravens are. The Ravens don't have a good defense, though. That, by extension, also helped the defense because complementary football helps shield the defense and keep their play count a little bit lower. You keep the snap count low. Now, Dre Greenlaw is also returning. How big of an impact does he have for the 49ers defense? Can Dre Greenlaw raise San Francisco's logo a little bit higher up? So are the results from McCaffrey's return going to be marginal? Are they going to be substantial? What can the 49ers offense do down the stretch? The goal is to get your logo further up and to the right. And the discussion will be how much can Dre Greenlaw and Christian McCaffrey help the 49ers do just that? Those are the obvious moves for San Francisco. Now, John Lynch on KMBR today also talked about Talanoa Hufanga potentially coming back. The great news for San Francisco is that they've already gotten really, really good safety play in Talanoa Hufanga's stead. That's from Malik Mustafa. Just wait, I've got a defense analytics article coming for you on the SF Standard. And Mustafa's numbers have been downright lockdown. I mean, he had hardly given up anything into coverage. We saw him with a nice pass breakup against the tight end against the Cowboys this past weekend. His tackling is energizing for the 49ers. He's a stride tackler. They call him a sprint tackler. He'll run through opponents without shortening his stride. And I think that's given the 49ers a newfound energy defensively. And one thing that John Lynch mentioned today is that Jair Brown has upped his game. We spent some time talking about Jair Brown letting up a lot of yardage, a lot of plays earlier in the season. The 49ers were not getting as good of safety play as they had in prior seasons. They lost to Sean Gibson, obviously. They were getting really good cornerback play, but it was Jair Brown improving over the past few games that has finally allowed them to fully be comfortable with where they're at the safety position. They have Mustafa and Brown back there now. Early in the season, it was Jair Brown and George Odom filling in for Talanoa Hufanga before Malik Mustafa was ready to go. So the defense on the back end was a little sketchier at the safety position than it was at the cornerback position, and they weren't able to deliver the results that we've seen as of late. Now, they're coming off of a weird fourth quarter, to say the least, against the Dallas Cowboys, where they gave up 2 ugly touchdowns. If you're somebody that follows 49er strategy and you want to say, okay, how can they prevent this from happening moving into the future? You do have to look at each game individually, and if you look at each of those touchdowns individually to earmark what went wrong. And in the case of the 2 CeeDee Lamb scores, one was a totally busted coverage moving from a zone alignment, and the other was Jair Brown running into Renardo Green, the 49ers rookie cornerback, and that left CeeDee Lamb wide open. So the question is, was that a fluke? Is that something that's going to happen over and over again? I think the busted coverage was more concerning than the collision, because that collision, I think the 49ers will take care of. I haven't seen something like that happen in a long time on the football field. But that first busted coverage, Nick Sorensen has to make sure that those lapses do not happen over the stretch run of the season. I will say that in 2021, at this point, this was before week 10. Week 10 is when week 9. This was week 9. So at this exact point, actually, in 2021, the 49ers gave up 40-plus points to Colt McCoy and the Arizona Cardinals at home, and their defense was ranked number 21 in the league. So back in 2021, if you looked at the 49ers efficiency profile, their offense was about here. It was about number 6 or number 7. Their defense would have been way down here. 49ers would have been in the same spot as the Falcons at this point in 2021, yet they made it all the way back to the NFC Championship game. So relatively speaking, the 4-4 49ers, when you look under the hood of the efficiency profile, the 49ers are in better position than they were at this point of the 2021 season. The defense, I think, has a stronger foundation underneath it. The offense has a stronger foundation underneath it. And we could talk about special teams too. They may be ranked number 29, but they just outdueled the number one special teams unit in all the NFL. That was the Cowboys. That was a huge win for the 49ers special teams. On KMBR today, John Lynch was talking about how proud he was of his special teams unit for being able to win so decisively against the Cowboys. I think Dallas had 4 special teams penalties. The 49ers had 1. It was when they kicked it out of bounds. That was Anders Carlson, the kicker. That is a no-no, but a bigger no-no is to give up a massive return when you're ahead in the game. So I think the 49ers, given the fact that Seattle had a touchdown return, Laviska Shenault to bring Seattle back into the game a couple weeks prior, I don't think that they were losing all too much sleep over that kick out of bounds from Anders Carlson. Anyway, the 49ers have been in worse position before only to make a playoff run when it comes to the efficiency profile. And I think that this right now, where they're at, resembles the 2022 situation very, very closely because they have a decent defense. They have a decent offense. I would say solid for both of those units. And they have a chance now to truly, truly take this up another level and be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL. McCaffrey and Greenlaw are 2 obvious additions that the 49ers expect over the second half of this season. Now, especially with Greenlaw, we have to acknowledge that he may not be the same player, at least in the immediate aftermath of his return, as he was prior to the Achilles tear. The 49ers have a lot of problems at the linebacker positions past Fred Warner, who's the highest graded cover player in all of football, including cornerbacks. But they've consistently still given up a lot in coverage to linebacker 2 and linebacker 3. That's obviously Devondre Campbell and D. Winters, who's been in the concussion protocol this week. This dates back to Super Bowl struggles after Greenlaw got hurt. 9 targets into Oren Burks' coverage. He's no longer with the team, but 9 receptions in the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's something that if you're going to get over the hump of the Kansas City Chiefs, you're going to have to figure out. The 49ers tried to address the linebacker position with Eric Kendricks this offseason. Instead, they ended up beating Kendricks and the Cowboys this past Sunday because Kendricks backed out of that contract and they signed Devondre Campbell instead. So the 49ers have long been looking to try to address this problem. It's obviously a lot easier said than done. And Dre Greenlaw might be the 49ers' next stab at trying to actually fix it, to try to get somebody that can cover, that can move in space with the best of them next to Fred Warner. The problem is that Greenlaw's coming off of what's been historically a very devastating injury, the Achilles. And at this point, if you're the 49ers, we're not in on a lot of these medical meetings and on a lot of the rehab details for Dre Greenlaw. We just have to sit back and see if he's going to be returning at 80% of full speed, 85, 90, whatever it's going to be. And that is going to be a large determinant as to whether or not the 49ers are going to be able to upgrade that linebacker 2 position as they need. As far as Christian McCaffrey goes, well, yeah, this is also an Achilles. It's not an Achilles rupture, but it's Achilles tendonitis. He's been on the shelf for a while. Can we expect Christian McCaffrey to be thrust right back into 20-plus carries a game and the efficiency that we saw over the past couple seasons? Probably not. But what I would say about McCaffrey is the 49ers have a better insulated roster at the running back position than they had in prior seasons. And it starts with Isaac Guerendo. Isaac Guerendo is putting up Saquon Barkley type of burst numbers for the 49ers this season. But looking up and down the roster, but especially at running back, McCaffrey's obviously not there right now because he's still on IR. But if you slot him in here, even if Jordan Mason is still a little dinged up, but I think he'll be back off the shoulder sprain, Isaac Guerendo gives you a change of pace who can catch, but can also run in the same style as somebody like Raheem Mostert that might allow the 49ers to load manage Christian McCaffrey back into the mix. And I think that's really, really significant because coming off of Achilles tendonitis where load management is going to be something important to preserve Christian McCaffrey's health and his career for as long as possible, you have to have backs behind him that you can trust. And I do believe that Christian McCaffrey and Isaac Guerendo can be a good 1-2 punch at the top of the 49ers rotation. Now, I'm not discounting Jordan Mason. I just think that Jordan Mason runs with a slightly different style that made him the perfect closer for the 49ers in the past. You know, after you tenderize the defense over the course of the first 3 quarters, in comes Jordan Mason to punish them with physical runs. I think the 49ers can look at things from that perspective with their big bruising running back. What I have noticed, and could be coincidence, but it's probably not, just because it's physics, it's the reality of the situation. Mason was used 20 plus carries, average 20 plus carries for several weeks to begin the season. And then some injuries, especially the shoulder sprain, started limiting him. The more you expose a bruising running back to bruises, to big hits, the bigger the chance is that he's going to get beaten up. It's going to get a bit worn down. So Mason is, or was, in a role that might not have been sustainable. I don't think it is for anybody when you're carrying 20 plus times a game. He needs the relief just as much as Christian McCaffrey is going to need the relief when he returns, just as much as Isaac Guerendo is going to need some relief because he's a rookie and you don't want to overexpose him to a bunch of NFL hits. Guerendo's a guy that started only 1 game in college. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Kyle Shanahan operates the running back room, because he's going to have a 3-headed monster there with Patrick Taylor as the number 4, that if he manages it correctly, I think he can dice opponents and keep his own running back room fresher than it ever has been before. And that may be a mandatory order of operation for the 49ers. So anyway, those are the 2 things I wanted to cover tonight. Don't forget the 49ers' obvious trade deadline moves, McCaffrey and Greenlaw. It's going to be all about moving to the furthest reaches of the upper right that you can get here. And the 49ers, despite the fact that they're 4-4 and that the Chiefs, the Lions, the Bills, the Packers, the Vikings all have better records, the 49ers have a very similar efficiency profile. They're in a similar spot of this graph. So can the returns of McCaffrey, Greenlaw, and then possibly the additions of the players that we've talked about in the trade deadline? We talk about Calais Campbell. I have a graphic on Calais Campbell. This is going to be the one trade that I might actually look out for if you're talking about a rental for the 49ers. But you talk about Campbell, you talk about another defensive lineman that they can add. Can that all add up to moving the 49ers into better position up here so that they can make up some ground in the win-loss column, and so that they can be a team that remains favored over some of these other juggernauts in the NFL? This right here from Mike is going to be really, really good stuff. Let's open this up. I want to get this up on the full screen. There you go. This is up on Twitter. This is the run defense and pass rush chart of defensive linemen as far as grades for different players. And look at where Calais Campbell at age 38 is. Far to the right, far up. This is an age 38 player for the Miami Dolphins. Now, Miami is struggling right now. Tua Tagovailoa is back, but you do have to think at 2-5, if they lose one more and they move to 2-6, they might be willing to trade away a 38-year-old player. And Campbell, I mean, this is really somebody who's still playing at a high level, has a couple sacks already this season. This is absolutely something that I think 49ers fans should keep their eye out for. If they find something that makes sense, that can help them get better in the short run, and this is a team that has seen some defensive struggles against the run and could use some more pass rushing juice, even though they have produced, I think, from a pass rushing standpoint with who they have, but they could still use some more juice. I think that you do take a look. You look at other interior linemen in the league. They've gotten good pass rushing productivity out of Malik Collins, but he hadn't been graded as well in run defense. And Jordan Elliott, although he's a good run defender, he's way down here in terms of pass rushing productivity. So somebody like Calais Campbell, well, yeah, he's an outlier on this chart. Other outliers, Chris Jones, Jalen Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Cam Hayward. 49ers, if they're going to be serious about kicking the door down for the Super Bowl, if somebody that can move the needle does come available, they've got to investigate it with all of their might. And this has been a front office that has been very, very aggressive over the course of the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan tenure. So we'll see what the 49ers end up doing. All right, a little bonus night show after the World Series, keeping this one short. Everybody, leave your thoughts. Who do you want to see the 49ers pick up? What do you think they're going to get from McCaffrey and Greenlaw? We'll talk to you all very soon. Good night.